sanction. And the issue up until that point is clear. The transgressor is or were the proprietors of the hotel. That is clear up until that point. Where the governor appears to have strayed is in the sanction that he then imposed in ordering the destruction of the hotel complex. Now, I've checked the announcements that he made. There was a warning that hotels and bars that defy the order will be demolished. I've checked that. He did give that warning. And so again, thus far, the governor is within his rights. He had given the warning, assuming it was sufficiently communicated to the citizens, then there will be no excuse for any citizen to defy that order. However, there is always a however. However, in this case, the issue that I have with it is this. Yes, the hoteliers defied the order, but I also read that some operators in the oil sector defied the order, the same order, that there was a helicopter company, Caverton, I believe it is, ferrying oil workers into the state in contravention of the order. Now, what did the governor do in that instance? He did the right thing. He arrested them, or ordered them to be arrested, and declared that they will be dealt with in accordance with the due process of law. They will be charged to court. That's, in my assessment, is where he has erred, applying one sanction or one standard for one group of citizens to whom the same order applied, following due process, arresting them, and in the other case, taking the extreme sanction without due process, no arrest, and simply destroying the hotel. So I think that's where he has gone wrong.
Very well. Good explanation from the perspective of what you have followed happening over there. Now, so you believe in a wider context, there's a different law for different people and different entity.
Well, that's certainly the way he has allowed it to, the situation he has given rise to. Anybody looking at it objectively will say it was the same law that two enterprises broke. In one case, a big player, helicopter company servicing the oil sector, you arrested them or directed them to be arrested and to be charged to court. In the other case, you destroyed, without going through the process of arrest and prosecution, you simply bulldozed the hotel. That is not abiding by the rule of law. That's applying different standards to different transgressors.
I want to bring in Mr. Chivwali Wali.
Kalijai. Yes. Barrister, quite pleased with the explanation and how you've clarified the position of the law. But I have one question for you. Now, the governor makes a declaration that, okay, do not open during this period. Now, is he also legally allowed to institute the punishment?
If he follows the due process?
No, now what I'm asking is this. You can say, okay, there's lockdown, don't go out between the curfew period or do not open. Okay? And you can then say, okay, what does the law say is the punishment or retribution when you have AIDS? Because you cannot just make your own law or your punishment yourself. I don't think the governor has the right to mete out punishment himself. That's the question I want to ask you.
In this case, there is an emergency on the ground. There is a wider issue of general public safety.
Yes.
And he had announced. My issue is whether it was sufficiently communicated. it was sufficiently communicated that hoteliers who defy the law, their hotel will be destroyed, then you can have less sympathy with the hotelier who haven't been made aware of that possible sanction, then decide to run the risk of continuing in business.
Yeah.
However, as I've said, the importance, I would have had more sympathy with the governor up to that point if he was consistent in the treatment of other transgressors.
Yeah, honestly, that's a different issue altogether. The question I'm looking for an answer to, let me rephrase it. In some states, there have been contraventions, and what they do is to charge them to court and let the court, I believe, is the only legal authority allowed to mete out punishment. Take, for instance, a policeman arrests a street worker and he starts to slap him. He doesn't have such rights.
Clearly.
So, in the same case now, my question is that, okay, you see, I don't care if it's a hotel or carpeting or whoever that has contravened. My question is that, what does the law allow the governor to do when it says, okay, can you just say, from tomorrow, anyone that abuses me, I'll kill them? Is he allowed to do that?
Well, obviously there are limits and there's proportions.
Yes, so that's the limit I like us to look at. Because if you say, exercising my rights within my executive orders and do not do this, okay, and you have done it, you must be arrested. That's the first thing. Okay, now you that have arrested, you don't have the power also to punish. I think that's what the law says. One arm arrests, another arm puts the punishment out. Is that correct?
Well, there can be no dispute about that, which is why I said that in the case of the helicopter,
yes,
he followed due process.
Yes,
the law was clear. The power that he had was to arrest them or direct their arrest.
Them to be arrested, yes.
And then charge them to court. That is the proper process.
Right.
And I contrasted that with what he did in the case of the hoteliers, where he did not follow that process. What he did instead was to simply demolish the hotels. What I said, by way of leave the strict legal analysis aside.
Okay.
Even if you forgive the
hotel owner
in terms of, sorry.
No, I was saying the hotel owner, is it?
Yes. That focusing on that one, that the mitigation in this case, we're in a crisis situation.
Yes.
A clear announcement has been made that hotels should not open, and if you do, if that was clearly enough communicated to every citizen, hotelier, if you do, these are the sanctions that will follow. We as citizens can have a little more sympathy because we're all concerned about the health challenge, the crisis situation, that those who defy that, having been duly warned, then they put themselves at risk if they defy it, and then what it was warned then happens. But I accept your point that even if that was the sanction for the hotel to be destroyed, the proper procedure will be to get an order from the court.
Correct. Thank you for saying.
An order from the court, which would then sanction the destruction of that hotel.
Correct. We've had precedents in the past when the military in those days executed someone based on a law, on decree. Is it decree 2 or decree 4 in the military days?
Mm-hmm.
And that must have been the reason why they had to stop it. Because the same person that you have said, if you apply one law to A, the same law must apply to B. And that's, I think, it's why you, the executive, don't have the power to mete out punishment. Yours is to arrange the prosecution and hands off. You do not interfere or carry out the actual punishment. It's not done.
That is correct. The reason why you have that separation of powers between the executive action of the governor proclaiming the law in this case and directing the arrest of the transgressors. That's the enforcement of the law. That's as far as his own authority should go.
Yes.
And the reason why you would normally follow due process, which is a critical part of the rule of law, because the rule of law is concerned not only with the substantive, the substance of the law, but also the machinery of the law. And the reason why the courts are there is to act as a filter, as a check against possible abuses. Because the executive, who might be very anxious to see his law being obeyed,
Yes.
and like in this situation, clearly overstep the mark, and the courts then act as a check on what should then follow. It may be in this case the executive governor got carried away from them by the fact that he, as I understand it, is also a bencher and his wife is a judge. So maybe they had a trial with the household and then decided on the sanction between themselves.
Now look at this other one. Just before I leave this question, one other question. Let's assume the owner of the hotel wants to exercise his legal rights and he goes to court. Now, you and I know that, well, in quotes, the governors have infiltrated our courts, the high courts in their states, even though, with respect to you, it's not what you'd like to hear. But let's assume this guy goes to court. Will he have jurisdiction in the federal high court or in the state high court? Because if he goes to the state high court in River State, he will not have judgment. But if he goes to the federal high court in any state or in River State, will he have jurisprudence or jurisdiction if he goes to a federal high court? Because forget the state high court.
But it has to be said, and I don't shy away from saying it, that our judicial system has been politicized in a very troubling way. Such that legal reasoning cannot be relied upon. Proper legal reasoning, jurisprudence, as the lawyers call it, cannot be relied upon to predict the outcome of cases.
Yes.
When the law works well, 2 + 2 = 4. Unfortunately, when the trials are politicized, 2 + 2 can equal whatever the judge decides. It equals. And so there's always a concern that once standards start slipping in the judiciary, then justice becomes a lottery.
Yes.
And it depends on the favor and the integrity of a particular judge or a particular court, rather than pure legal principles. So yes, there will be a concern that the governor, especially now that it's such a cause celebrate, is out in the newspapers, etc. The chances of the injured party getting justice from a River State court, a state court, is very, very remote indeed. It will take a brave judge to defy the governor
Yes.
in an exercise which has become so public and so
Yes.
controversial.
So can the guy go to a federal high court then?
Well, I can't say, I haven't got the constitution in front of me, but I suspect you'll have no choice but to have a go and try to get a hearing at federal level. But I can't answer that definitively because I don't have the...
Yeah, because I am a victim of a similar circumstance where I took a state government to court in a particular state over breach of agreement and contract. And the governor assured me that in my 8 years here, your case will never see the light of the day. He actually said it verbatim. So I took the case to a federal high court in the state. And after 3 years of battling back and forth, the federal high court threw the case back to us and said we must first of all go and try the case at the state high court, that they don't have automatic jurisdiction on state matter. But then where it became more complex for me is that if you are dealing with private citizens, maybe it's a state matter. But once it's a corporate entity, it's a federal matter because I pay my taxes to federal government. So by Nigerian statutes and laws, any company limited by guarantee of trust is federally constituted. Hence, you should have jurisdiction in any federal high court. But you see, there's a lot of ambiguities with respect in our laws. And you see a lot of shadows. And it's not clear what to do. So it takes a very smart lawyer to hide under those shadows. But anyway, well, I'll leave that to you guys to go and battle out. But we just want to know what does the law say?
Well, you're right. That our jurisprudence is highly unsatisfactory at the moment. Most of the cases I find are decided on technicalities rather than on proper substantive
merits, yeah,
and merits, and which produces a situation where the citizen cannot know with clarity or sufficient clarity where they actually stand in relation to the law, which is not an ideal situation at all. It is meant for when a legal system works properly. An ordinary citizen should be able to find his way to justice, even without using laws. But if the web of the law is too intricately spun,
yes,
it's confusing for lawyers, then we have a problem.
Very good. Let me quickly move to Honorable Ndubuisi, which I think is actually in the South. Is Ndubuisi, Dr. Ndubuisi?
Yeah, good evening, Ben and participants. Please start to take us back to. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, please start to take you back to the caveating issue. I'm at a loss here with the powers of the federal government, not of the state. We know that all the lands in the state belong to the governor. At the same time, that enclave called Air Force Base, where the capital helicopters actually landed or operates from, belongs to the federal government. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go on.
Good. So, and again, the oil workers who were arrested by the governor of River State had permission from the federal government to operate, to carry out the operations in River State. So what right again does the state government have to arrest persons who already are authorized by the federal government, vis-a-vis the land ownership, capital efforts, and all that. On the issue of demolition of the hotels, do the court have such power? Because the governor used his actions on a court order, which he said he got. Only God knows when he got such. Can the court, without that right of failure, give the governor's power to demolish somebody's hotel, even though he was he agreed the state executive orders assigned by the governors? Would the offender be given that opportunity of fair hearing before such actions are taken on him or his properties? Please, if I get clarification on this issue from the client.
Thank you.
I think we've dealt with the actual question already. Was what process the governor should have followed, even if the sanction set out in the executive order was the demolition of the transgressor's hotel. We've already agreed that what he should have done and what he failed to do was to follow due process, i.e., to direct the offender to be arrested, charged to courts, and then the courts to order the destruction of the hotel if appropriate, having heard the defense or whatever plea mitigation may have been appropriate. As regards the helicopter scenario cavity, there's a difference between the ownership of the land and the whatever permission the federal government may have granted in relation to the executive order issued by the state governor, who is responsible for the security of the state. If an order has been issued for the security and the welfare of the peoples of the state, that everybody should stay at home, businesses and hotels should not open, then whatever permission the oil executives may have obtained at federal level is neither here nor there. It cannot override what the state governor has decreed for the security of his citizens.
Very well. Now we move to Councillor Susan.
You've already muted. Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for shedding light into what is happening over there. I just have a couple of questions, just to follow up what I've heard since I've joined the meeting. And the first one that I want clarification on, if anybody knows, we are talking about lockdown. The whole point around lockdown is to save lives and to keep people safe. And I want to find out, this is an hotel, I believe, whether there is any assessment or in terms of safety, in terms of whether people are actually in that building or in the environment before they started to demolish it. That is one thing I want to find out, which is important. And the other thing that I want to find out is in terms of executive order in Nigeria. For instance, I'm a politician here, and before the lockdown or all other things were put into place, House of Commons need to bring the COVID-19 bill to make that into law. In Nigeria, does executive order equals the law? And if the governor says issue an executive order, does that become law? Or that would be useful for me to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, my understanding is that the governor does have capacity to issue executive orders. One would assume that after the order has been issued, because it's almost an emergency piece of legislation, if you like, it would then, within a given time frame, then be sanctioned by the lawmakers. But very often you haven't got the time to convene the assembly, the legislatures together, and action needs to be taken, which has not been anticipated in the Constitution. A pandemic like this, the detail of it would not have been anticipated by pre-existing legislation. So there must be capacity for the governor to issue an order in his executive capacity, but then that would then have to be reviewed by the legislatures within a given time. In order, otherwise, you run the risk that Wale touched on earlier, that the governor could do what he likes simply because he's the governor and make whatever law he wants. So it would only be effective within a given time frame, and it will have parameters within which he could actually issue such an order. He couldn't simply do what he liked. As regards the detail of who was in the building, one can only assume that the building was clear and empty by the time they destroyed the building. Otherwise, that would the governor himself would be exposed to some criminal sanction and criminal action if citizens going about their daily business, staff were in the building. One can only assume that the building was clear before the building was destroyed.
Very well. Mr. Wanko, in Port Harcourt or where? Okay.
Well, first of all, what my understanding is from what the legal advisory explained, the executive orders of the state supersedes that of the federal government, or even that of the constitution, which I see down. Then on the issue of the demolished hotel, I can tell you categorically clear that this is a power play between the governor and some youth from that locality. I don't want to go into the details, but it's purely political. What the governor did was simply to show his strength, his power as the governor of the state. Because the owner of the hotel is a young man from that community, from that locality. The governor said his orders were not adhered to by the young man. So it was a kind of just to show that he's the governor of the state. You ask me, I'm here in River State, so I think I have some special information.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I have understood, and I did read that the owner of the hotel was the chairman of youth wing of the People's Democratic Party in River State. Also, that the individual in question had recently been declared wanted by the governments of River State, and it therefore looks a bit fishy and suspect when the hotel that is then destroyed happens to belong to this fugitive, if you like. It seems a strange coincidence, and it may be that the governor has left himself slightly exposed there, because if under cover of a lawful order, his actual intent was to get at somebody who was a political a political inconvenience, let me use that expression, then there's a risk of the governor having actually exceeded his lawful powers ultra vires.
Very well.
You don't use a law for an unlawful purpose. So if your purpose was to get at this political troublemaker, assuming that's the case, who had been declared wanted. I'm not clear as to why he was declared wanted. And he's the chairman of the youth wing of the PDP. If it turns out that there was actually an ulterior motive dominating the mind of the governor when this action of destruction was taken, then he leaves himself open to possible lawsuits.
Thanks. Let's move to the admin. I can't get your name right.
It's Juliet Benson.
Oh, okay. How you doing?
I'm fine. Thanks for all the input so far. Very interesting discussion here. And a big thank you to Leonard Brains, Dele Kuku. I just throw more light on what has happened, and in particular, focus on the acts of the governor. And I think the adage my learned friend was looking for was when he started was it's power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely.
That's the one.
I think that's what you had in mind at the beginning of this. Now, and we want to look is whether what he's done is appropriate. And in my view, what the government seems to have done, he's made himself as the investigated the matter. He prosecuted the matter. He acted as a defense counsel in the matter, and also the judge, and went ahead to execute. So you can see all the various powers that he attributed to himself, which actually make a mockery of the law, because you ask yourself, why do we have the rule of law? Why do we have justice system? What is our constitution doing? And he that is in a public eye must apply the description of the constitution. And so it's one that I think everyone needs to look into properly, because if we don't deal with this appropriately, it's going to set a precedent. As one of the speakers said earlier, or asked the question that, no confidence in the state high court. If you go to the state high court, you may not have justice, because a lot of them probably, or some familiarity reasons, may not, apply the justice system. And so this is a matter that it's very important that everyone will look at it and get down to the root of it, and make sure that a precedent is set and people do not take the law into their hands. Yes, it has been alleged that the venues used for a lot of illegal things. It has been alleged prostitution, all sorts have been alleged. That's fine. If we commit a crime, that's why we have the rule of law. That's why we have the courts. That's why we have the justice system. So all he needs to do, either seal up the case, arrest the individual concerned, and then take it from that camp of the executive and pass it on to those that are responsible for and taking the law forward. And obviously, the gentleman has the right of fair hearing, has the right to defend his side, has the right to present his case, and state, what his defenses are, why he acted the way he acted, and it's for the court to take that forward. But for him to have done what he's done, I think this is just not right. It makes a mockery, total mockery of the judicial system.
I agree with you very much, Julia, that you see, we started with explaining the rule of law, that everybody, governor, president, is subject and subsists underneath that law. The law regulates and governs their actions and controls it. The exercise of executive office requires discipline. The discipline to follow the law and stay within the parameters. And if the law says this is the process by which you deal with transgressors, and criminals, then you, the executive, have the responsibility to stay within the parameters. Otherwise, your conduct is as bad as the one who you are alleging to have committed an offence. Two different types of offences, but the offences nevertheless. The transgressor, the citizen, has violated the law by not obeying the substance of the law decreed. But you, the executive, have also violated the law by not following the process that the law has laid down by which such transgressors are supposed to be dealt with. So you're on the same plane and you stand on the same ground as the person who you're pointing a finger at. And when they say, take care of the log in your own eye before you're removing the speck in the other person's eye, this is a clear example.
Let me quickly ask you, Mr. Ogon, about because you wrote this wonderful book, The Fatherless People, I believe. Yeah. Looking at the situation where we are now, will you still think that we are indeed a fatherless nation?
A fatherless people, yes. It actually, all the events that are happening on the ground now serve to confirm. And in fact, what I find is that people have less difficulty understanding why I chose that title because of the events they see around, where members of the executive are just behaving how they wish. Lawlessness and no sense of the bigger picture, the bigger responsibility, the bigger vision for our people. Because fathers, mothers, parents, they're always looking out for the future of their offspring, their wards, to create an enabling environment in which they can be the very best that they can. And when we ask ourselves, can we look around and see any of the political class leaders creating an environment in which Nigerians can be the very best that they can be? The answer has to be no. We're following, even when you look at the issue that we're dealing with, the governor's conduct, in the context of this COVID-19 pandemic, what we find is that they are simply copying and pasting solutions from elsewhere in the world, telling people to stay at home in homes where they have not provided them light, in homes where they have not provided them running water. It is easy for those in the West to stay at home because they have those basic amenities. But you're asking people in the condition in which we've left our people to stay at home. That is, you've simply copied, you the governors and the political class, you're simply copying the exam papers of your fellow candidates. You're not engaging your own thought process as political leaders to say what is appropriate in our situation. And this is why a lot of our people are complaining that hunger will kill more of us than this COVID-19 will. We haven't got the reserves. We haven't got the savings. We live from day to day on a subsistence level because this is where you left us. And so people are beginning to understand what is really meant by a fatherless people.
Thank you so much. As we begin to round up, let me quickly ask Juliet, what more role do you see women really playing in this COVID-19, and especially looking at what the governors did, which at least we have examined it very well. What do you think can be done more to empower women in this crisis situation? at least it's good that it wasn't a woman that owns a hotel. But nevertheless, it's still a bigger issue for us to examine as well.
Okay. But I'm of the view that if you want to get anything work and work properly, I'm not being racist here, but it has been proven that if you want to get anything work and get it to work properly, give it to a woman, and she can do it. Now, I'm of the view that women, the best way they can help with COVID is really, well, those that have a home, hold your home properly, and get to speak to your children regularly. It's very important. And get the kids to think outside the box. Okay, so with COVID-19, what is it doing? You're stuck at home. And it's time you get to let these children know it's not about a 9 to 5 anymore, because a lot of good things can come out of COVID-19. So, apart from, seriously apologize for the lives that have been lost, quite a lot of other positive things can come out of it. Let the women make sure they spend more time with the children, let them think outside the box, and let them make something good for themselves. So while you're home, spend more time thinking about positive things, and look at, for example, with this case in hand now, I think is an opportunity for family to sit together and talk and say and ask the ideas. What do you think? Did he do right? What should have done? What should he have done better? And all that. That way, you get to put the thinking skills or the ability that your children know. And I think women should also be given the opportunity to play a big role in COVID-19 in the decision making, set up committees held by women, and in particular, so they can look after the palliatives for the families. As you're aware, as Dilip rightly said, a lot of people are suffering at the moment. They haven't got enough food and all that. Now, a woman is able to take certain decisions and measure certain things that a household would need, as opposed to leaving that bit to a man to deal with, because really that's not an area. So there are lots that women can do.
Thank you. Let me quickly give space to Susan before another person in Nigeria. Just a short question, please, Councillor.
Thanks very much. It is a general question, to be honest with you. What we felt this evening, Juliet, I didn't know that was you. We felt this evening, we all, it's been on and on about the judiciary, lack of judiciary independence in Nigeria and the improper influence the government and politicians has on our judiciary system. And I just want to find out, in terms of having a third moving conversation, what do we in the diaspora, what do we do? More importantly, we know that what happened in River State was power struggle between two people. And like Juliet said, if we stand by and don't do anything, this will set precedent. And other governors or other politicians can think they can do things like this and get away with it. I think it is important while we're having this conversation, what sort of engagement, what sort of engagement can we have in the diaspora with people in Nigeria, with our judiciary? Because at the end of the day, what we are saying, we don't want this to happen again. This is not meant to be happening in a civilized society. So where are we going at the end of this conversation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think from my own perspective, is basically trying to create a platform whereby we can use the opportunity of having our expert who their bread and butter doesn't depend on what they do in Nigeria. So, and that more or less gives them the independency to really look at cases that we may be following trending, and for them to say, well, under normal circumstances, if this is going to be in the United Kingdom, it is going to be in Western, where full democracy or due process is being followed. This is what it could have been. The case would not have been lingering for years without any system being put in place. And at the end of the day, you just keep following, keep hearing. And in my early days here, I remember coming when I got into this place, like something happened yesterday. And the following day, I heard it that it's already in court. It's like, wow, within a day, it's already in court. This doesn't happen where I'm coming from. So let's look at it that we want to build on this and then create this platform whereby people can respect the independency of the people we have as panelists. And because they're expert, they're legal people, sharing what should have been. And this is the way that I think we from the diaspora, we can contribute to begin to strengthen the legal framework in Nigeria. Yeah.
Can I come in, Alistair?
Yes. Chawale, you can, and then I'll take the.
What we've been clamoring is NJC should be allowed to exercise its powers independently. Okay, now executive should not be the one appointing chief justices, chief judges, and all that. You see, we need to look at the problem from the bottom. Where is this rot coming from? You see, I mean, you can, and that's one. Secondly, the funding of our legal, the third arm of government, the judiciary, should not come from the executive directly. They should not rely on the executive to get funded. You see, this is where the bias comes in. Now, on the issue that Susan raised about how we in the diaspora can also help, well, is to form this, I don't like to use the word pressure group, but a focused group that we keep emphasizing and producing workable white papers. And we push and push and push until we get our day in the airs. We've been saying all these things. For instance, diaspora voting. The income from the government of Nigeria mostly comes from diaspora. Apart from the direct inflow from oil sales, which is, hello, am I still here?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, now the inflow from oil is going to be zero very soon, if not zero right now. Now, the country rely on our transfers, remittances to run the economy. Like the lawyer said, that most Nigerians are self-sustained. Every man to himself. So most people don't even have the impact of government in any way in their life or anything. So if we diaspora that send all this money and still our voice cannot be heard, then there's a problem. Is it that we in the diaspora have not put ourselves in the proper position of strength so that our voices can be heard?
Very good.
And what you say can also be implemented.
Okay. Thanks. Let me get Nwako to say something, and then before going to Miss Juliet. NWC?
by Kenneth. It's not right to leave a blanket negative impression on the entire executive in Nigeria. That's not proper. Maybe you can give us one or two examples of those executives that are not doing well. But to place a blanket negative impression or classification of executives, I don't think it's right. Some of them are doing well.
It's name one doing well.
Not doing well. Sorry?
It's name one doing well.
Well, let's just take the one that is not doing well. I'll also give it to those that are doing well. That is that. Then, on the issue of copy and paste by our government, I also don't think so. What the government is doing to contain COVID-19 is a world standard.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah?
we don't have water, we don't have power. We can't have those things now. because I have water, I don't have power, does not mean to be on the street. Because there is this common slogan: criminality does not move. It's only when you move that it moves. So we cannot be on the street because I have water in our home, we don't have power in our home. Even those that have power and water in them, you are protecting the lockdown. So what our government is doing is to follow somewhat global.
No, you see, sorry, I'm sorry I have to comment now. The government is just cut and pasting what works in other climes. The government needs to have sat down and design what is workable for Nigeria and Nigerians. You see,
So you
social
are not to go on the street.
no, you must look at our environment and design what works best for us. Look, let's be factual with ourselves. Social distancing. Go to Ajigule. In face me, I face you house. Tell me how you can maintain social distance in a house that has 18 rooms and 2 bathrooms. How can you social distance in that environment? Or where you have everybody sharing one kitchen. So we need to look at things from our own environment. You know, even look at what they do here on Thursdays where they clap for the NHS workers. That thing is not being done in Nigeria by the wives of the governors. You just copy everything blindly and stupidly. We must begin to look at things that work for us. For instance, going to distribute food stuff for Nigerians, it's a wrong move. You want to share money from this relief fund. Come on, this is 21st century. How can government be sharing cash? How can you get people on the streets to line up and be giving them items? Most Nigerians have bank accounts. Those that don't have accounts have mobile phones. You can instruct all the banks to send money to them through their phones.
Okay.
And they can go to their cash point and cash the money.
So I'm going to quickly make sure that we are within time so that I can quickly bring in Juliet, who wants to add something in the conversation.
Yes.
Okay. Just a very quick question for Daily, and then observation on diaspora voices as well. Now, we know that the governor cannot be personally liable. So my question is on liability in the case in question. Assuming this matter goes forward, now, who is responsible for paying out that liability? Is going to be the state or the governor? That's what Daily. And then the other question, just to throw light on diaspora voices, diaspora being active or being part of what's happening. I know this might not be the appropriate forum to bring this up, but it's something that I think we should all think about. How we can be part of the diaspora commission, how we can be part of that, set up a committee and be part of it, because you can make rules for me without me having a voice in the rules that you want to make for us. So we are in diaspora, we know how it works here, so we should be able to be part of the law-making process or whatever policies and things they're trying to make over there that applies to us, because we will give them a better input as opposed to them just reading and feeding back to us. So that's something I think all of us we can go away with and think about how we can take this forward, and I'm sure we can do this with our own little network wherever we are with government. So maybe on liability, Dele can just throw lights on that.
Well, one would assume that in a civil action, which is what the aggrieved individual will be taking, it will be an action against the state government rather than the governor. And so the burden falls on the public revenues rather than the governor himself. The only sanction that the citizens can take if they take on board the fact that this governor has abused his authority, then in theory, it is when the elections come round that they can have their pound of flesh. And I stress in theory. Just a quick comment as regards diaspora and diaspora influence. Yes, the diaspora have underrated their potential. And the reason they've done so is that they have not organized themselves. We're living in isolation rather than moving as a unit and collectively. When the diaspora organize themselves under one roof, a powerful roof, not a government-sanctioned, I know that there's some Nigerians in diaspora organization that has the blessing of government. That one will not work. It is a diaspora organization that is owned and funded by the diaspora, such that they're completely independent of government and can speak truth to power. Then they'll make their impact felt. And the revenues that they're now sending home can then be, if they now decide to go on strike as regards remittances, then the government will feel the impact. So it requires proper organization, walking in step, collective action, and then you can make your impact felt. As regards our friend Ndebisi, who is saying that because everyone else in the world is saying stay at home, we should also stay at home, that it's universal policy. Well, our point is that the standard of living is not universal. So you've got to apply policies that are relevant to your condition, your situation. And you can't be telling people to stay at home in homes where it's face me, face you. And even before the pandemic, those conditions were unhealthy in the extreme. I'd rather leave the people out, let them go about their life, and just caution them in terms of cleanliness, in terms of maintaining distance, rather than stay at home, which is now proved unsustainable. Because, of course, stay at home is still on over here, and they can keep it on over here because they know that the condition of living is reasonable enough. But back home, in the face me, face you, how long are you going to tell those people to stay at home for? When they have no savings, no stock of food. And so, of course, the policy does not work because you copy everybody else for 1 week, 2 weeks, to tell the rest of the world that you two are staying at home. And then, for fear of a complete breakdown of order, you're having to lift the stay at home. That can actually compound the problem. It'll be harder next time to tell them to stay at home if you've lifted the order too quickly.
Very well, thank you very much. I think the last probably person I may probably pick is, I'm not sure if Susan is still having one line. That's the councillor here. Susan there, or that is it? And
Sorry, I'm here.
okay, hopefully you're satisfied with the added information and from our legal expert here in the diaspora, surely.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie and the other people. It just breaks my heart as a politician in this country when I see what happens in Nigeria. Some of us engage either directly or indirectly with some of Nigeria's politicians. And when you have conversation with these people, they're actually not, they know what they're doing. They're deep people. Look at Wike. Wike is a lawyer. He's got a wife as a judge. So it's not just with due respect to a governor that I know from my state. He's not just one of these people that don't have enough education or background, that not exposed. just get to becoming a governor and try to misbehave. They are the sort of people you would want to be in government in Nigeria. And if this is the sort of example he's setting, that is disheartening and get us to reassess what is happening in that country and how we can influence and have impact on the way democracy works in Nigeria.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'll just give my two panelists 1 minute or just last comment, Miss Juliet. Yeah, Juliet.
Right. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But the final word on this is this is very encouraging, very important that the diaspora deem it fit to look at cases happening back home. It shows that we are concerned. It shows that we don't like what's happening there. It shows that we have the ability to make a change. And as Dele rightly said, it is really time for the diaspora to come together, not set up by anyone, but we individuals with the ability and with the connection, with the contact to come together and make an impact back home. And you've heard this severally how they talk about the India and the Asians, what they've done from here and helping the economy. It's time we do that. We've got the ability, we've got the intellectuals, and I'm sure we have the funding. If we don't, we can raise that somehow. So it's high time. And once we are able to make that impact, and whenever we don't see that resources coming from us, they will feel the impact, as Dele rightly said. So this is a very good initiative, and I think we should keep this on. And a big thank you to Ben TV for taking this forward and bringing people together. And we should take this on and communicate regularly and see how we can be of great impact to our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ogun.
Yes, I will conclude by saying this, that the diaspora is the most powerful force available for the transformation of our country. And it is a responsibility of those in the diaspora to rise to that challenge. Strength and the turnaround of India was due to its diaspora. The strength and the turnaround of China was due to its diaspora. Nigeria will fix up when the diaspora step up. We are the ones who are not standing on the carpet. We're not feeding from the mouths or the handouts of governments. So we are in a position to speak truth to power. And we have the vantage point of being able to see how systems work and should work, as against how things are working and should not be working on the ground. We are the spokesmen for our people who do not have the capacity and often do not have the information, even if they have the inclination to speak truth to power. So it is time, and Ben has an important role in that regard of projecting the voice of the diaspora back home, such that those in authority will know that there are people watching, and knowledgeable people watching, and people who are not self-interested in watching, objectively watching. And it is in that way that we can turn and help our people back home.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ogun. Thank you, Juliet. Panel of experts within the legal community here in the United Kingdom and Europe, and people who are very conversant with what's happening in Nigeria. And as I said, I would just pray and beg of you to always be available, because now hopefully we can take this forward and begin to examine cases on a regular basis, be it weekly, be it twice a month, but surely enough, almost every day we know things are happening back home. And the more, as you rightly said, the more they can hear and know that people are watching and people are actually examining this from a legal framework, I think the better it will be for us to contribute towards our national development. So once again, thank you very much for those who are on from Nigeria and outside. We appreciate, and I would say have a wonderful week, and we will continue to talk on Govt all together. So thank you.